Let's talk about remixes. What if I told you that the whole idea didn't start with DJs and laptops, but with trumpets and saxophones, like 100 years ago? Get ready, because today we're diving into the story of jazz, the original remix.
You know that feeling, right? When a DJ takes a song you love, flips the beat, adds a new vibe, and creates something totally fresh and amazing? That's a remix, taking something that's already out there and putting your own creative spin on it.
Well, here's the wild part. That exact idea, that's the engine that has been powering one of the most important kinds of music in history. And it all started way, way before computers or DJ decks were even a thing. Let's get into it.
Okay, so before you can make any remix, you need an original track, right? You need the blueprint. And for our story, that blueprint is the birth of jazz itself.
The absolute key word here is improvisation. Seriously. Think of it like freestyling with your friends or just making up a story as you go. Early jazz musicians would take a basic tune and then, right there on the spot, they'd make up new music. That single idea, making it up as you go, is the heart and soul of every single version of jazz we're going to talk about.
So as soon as this blueprint was out there, musicians immediately started putting their own creative flavors on it. And this led to the first big showdown, a super fast, expert-level version versus a totally laid-back, chill new take. So in the 1940s, you had these absolute legends like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. They looked at the popular, kind of simple dance music of the time and were like, nah, we can do something way more intense. They created bebop. You got to think of this as jazz on expert mode. It was lightning fast, incredibly complex, and it wasn't for dancing. This was music that made you just stop and listen with your jaw on the floor, admiring the insane level of skill.
But look, nobody wants to play on expert mode all the time, right? Sometimes you just want to chill. So almost as a direct response, a whole new remix dropped. Cool jazz. I mean, just look at the difference here. Where bebop was all about speed, cool jazz was slow and relaxed. Where bebop was intense, cool jazz was all about creating a calm, smooth vibe. And a guy named Miles Davis was right at the center of this new sound, taking all that fire from bebop and just cooling it way down. So now we've got the fast remix and the chill remix. But some musicians started to feel like things were maybe getting a little too complicated. Like they were losing touch with what made jazz so powerful in the first place. So they decided it was time to remix again, this time by going back to basics. And this brings us to hard bop. What a brilliant idea this was. They took the brainy, high-level skill of bebop, but they injected it with that raw, soulful feeling from blues and gospel music. It had this powerful, driving beat that you could really feel. Hard bop was the remix that brought the head and the heart back together again. Okay, so we've seen remixes that change the speed, the mood, the whole feeling of the music. But what if you wanted to do more? What if you wanted to change the actual rules of the game itself, to get even more creative freedom?
Well, the answer was something called modal jazz. And yeah, that guy Miles Davis was back at it again, changing everything. See, before this, most jazz songs had tons of fast chord changes. Think of it like a video game where you have to jump between tiny platforms really, really quickly. Modal jazz basically got rid of that. It gave musicians one huge open musical world, a mode, to just hang out in and explore for a long time. The amount of creative freedom this opened up was massive.
This analogy is just perfect. The old way was like telling a painter they had to switch to a new color every single second. How much could you really create? But modal jazz was like giving that same painter one color, say blue, and telling them, go wild. Explore every single shade of blue you can possibly imagine. You can see how that tiny change in the rules just unlocked a whole new universe of creativity. So once musicians got a taste of that kind of freedom, some of them decided they wanted, well, all of it. The next phase we're talking about is where the goal wasn't just to bend the rules anymore. It was about breaking them completely. Welcome to free jazz. If bebop was expert mode, this was sandbox mode with all the rules turned off. Musicians like Ornette Coleman literally just threw out the rulebook on melody, harmony, rhythm, everything. The whole band would just improvise all at once. Now, to some people, it sounded like total chaos. But for the musicians, it was the purest, most direct form of creative expression possible. Now, while some musicians were breaking all the rules, others were busy building bridges. They were looking at the massive energy coming from rock and funk music and asking, hey, what if we remix that with jazz? And this right here is the recipe for what they made, jazz fusion.
It was loud, it was electric, and it brought jazz to a whole new generation of fans. And that idea of mixing and matching just kept going. Jazz was like this incredible sponge, soaking up new technology, new sounds, and new musical cultures from all over the planet. One of the most amazing results of this was Latin jazz. Musicians started blending jazz with these super complex and infectious rhythms from places like Cuba and Brazil. And the result was this vibrant, energetic music that just makes you want to move. It proved that the jazz remix could now speak a truly global language.
So, with all these different styles, you might be wondering, how does a jazz band even work? Who does what? Well, the best way to think about it is like a team or a squad in a video game. You've got your lead players, the sax or trumpet. They're like the lead singers. You've got the piano or guitar as your support crew, laying down the harmonies. The bass is the foundation, holding it all together. And the drums? That's the heartbeat, driving all the rhythm and energy. Everyone has to listen to each other to make it work.
Okay, so with all this history, it's easy to think that jazz is something that just belongs in a museum. But that could not be more wrong. This whole idea of constant remixing is still happening right now. I mean, this timeline says it all. The remix literally never stops. From mixing with rock in the 60s to Latin music in the 80s, all the way to today, where you can hear the DNA of jazz in so much hip-hop, electronic music, and beyond. It is a living, breathing art form. And because it's always changing, always evolving, jazz has become this truly international language. You can go to a club in Tokyo, a festival in Paris, or a concert right down the street, and you can find people speaking this amazing language of creativity and improvisation. So if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. The story of jazz isn't just about notes and rhythms. It's a story about always, always looking forward and asking that one simple question: what's next? Because at the end of the day, that's the real lesson here. Creativity is about taking what's in front of you, a song, an art project, an idea, and putting your own unique spin on it, making it yours. So now it's your turn. What's the next remix that you are going to create?